and welcome to the start of a brand new podcast that I'm going to call the Professionally Lacking Podcast. Podcast by yours truly. So let's get right into it. Today we're talking about food waste and moral ethics. Firstly, I'm going to introduce the issue. 80 billion tons of food are wasted every year, which is worth about 161 billion US dollars. 219 pounds of food waste per person, which can get up to about 30 to 40% of the national food supply. And most of this wasted food is sent to landfills, which contributes to a lot of pollution. All of this is down to human behaviors. People misunderstand expiration labels and throw away perfectly good food. We don't appreciate the food we have, and we don't make an effort to compost the food we don't eat. Now, there are, some solutions to the problem, such as, some places have tried pushing forward, state-sponsored or private companies to help deal with food waste. This goes from like the local community to the federal government. They're all working on solutions as this problem, deeply coincides with climate change, which is another very big problem. Anyway, so let's get into the main part of the podcast, and that is analyzing how moral ethicists, different types of moral ethics, would respond to this case study. So, starting with utilitarianism. So, utilitarianism has three main parts: hedonism, like happiness, utility, and the benevolent disinterested spectator. So, firstly, hedonism. Stopping food waste would lead to the most happiness, as everyone would be helped out and happy since the planet we all live on is safe. Utility, meaning stopping food waste, is an action that is good in itself. It is also an action that provides happiness through the given service to help preserve our home. And the benevolent disinterested spectator. How will this affect a third unbiased party? This will undoubtedly affect them in a positive way, as the effort to improve our way of life through reducing food waste is a way to attain happiness and save our world. So the next moral ethics would be deontology. Now, deontology has multiple parts, but it all leads to the same thing. Freedom is the basis of any good action. People who choose to do something about food waste are acting under their free will, therefore making it a good action. An action is only good if it is done with a good intention. Anyone who is intentionally doing something about food waste has a good intention. An intention is only good if it is done out of sense of duty to the moral law. When you're intending to help stop food waste, you're doing it because it is truly the right thing to do, and you therefore are doing it out of a sense of duty. The moral law is defined by reason. The reason for helping to stop food waste is because it is a good intention. We want to continue living on this planet for as long as we can. Sorry, Elon. And reason gives us the categorical imperative, the universe, that being the universal law test. Is everyone in the world capable of following this law? The only ways this, the universal law test would fail is if the law contradicts itself, or it contradicts the will of the person who came up with it. So in the case of food waste, if everyone had to compost, had to do something about food waste, this wouldn't hurt anyone. This, someone who comes up with a universal law to help our planet, obviously that won't have their will contradicted, as there is no way this could go wrong. And the end in itself test, are you using someone as a means to an end? If everyone is supposed to always either compost their food or help out, and it wouldn't use anyone as a means to an end, instead everyone would be working towards a common goal. So next we'll talk about rights ethics. So under, you know, rights defined by rights ethics would be demands we impose on others. And because demands that cannot be enforced are empty demands, there is the expectation, or at least the hope, implicit in every rights-based demand that others should not only heed the demand, but be willing to enforce it. There are two main rights ethicists that I will go over, and that is John Locke and John Rawls. John Locke is a far older philosopher, and he believes that God exists. Human beings are all equally God's property. He believes in the rights of life, the right to life, liberty, and property. And the role of government is to protect our rights. Locke would agree with stopping food waste as it would lead to more property for everyone. Now, John Rawls is a little more complicated as he included multiple parts in his philosophy. Now, he came up with a truly just society is one which would be chosen the original position. The original position is characterized by the veil of ignorance. Behind the veil of ignorance, we would choose the two principles of justice, equal liberty, and the difference principle. The difference principle being inequality is acceptable if it benefits those on the bottom, and there's equality of opportunity. So Rawls would also agree with stopping food waste, as it would provide benefits to the least advantaged in society. Now we're going to talk about virtue ethics and how a virtue ethicist would respond. Now, the most notable virtue ethicist would be Aristotle, the ancient Greek guy. And he said in his virtue ethics, basically everything has a telos. Our telos is eudaimonia. You can't have eudaimonia without balance. You can't have balance without character. You can't have character without virtue. You can't have virtue without training. Telos is basically a purpose. Everything has its purpose. You make food to be eaten. Something like that. Our telos, our purpose is eudaimonia. That's like a way of saying like a human's purpose. Now, balance. Let's talk about balance. Balance is one of the core parts of this philosophy as it requires balancing in between vices of excess and deficiency, balancing on virtue. Now, virtue is, there are different character traits that go along with virtue. The ones I'll be talking about would be generosity and temperance. So the two main character traits that go along with food waste would be generosity and temperance, like I said. Generosity being how much you are willing to give. In the case of stopping food waste, how much service are you willing to give to stop food waste? Temperance being how much you contribute to the problem of food waste. In terms of food waste, the United States, lives in excess, vice of excess in terms of temperance, which would be gluttony, and the vice of deficiency of generosity, which would be stinginess. Now, another part of virtue ethics would be the bending stick, which would be basically if you are living in a vice of excess, you would bring yourself to the other extreme, which would be the vice of deficiency, therefore balancing yourself out more. So the United States can fix their vice of deficiency problem of food waste by doing more to make sure food waste problems such as food not, making sure that food doesn't end up in landfills and imperfect looking food still ends up on your dinner plate. The United States can fix their vice of excess by not buying so much food and only eating or buying what you need. And now, finally, how I would respond and which theory I would relate most to. I would say that, we need to do everything that we can to combat, changing climates and rising global temperatures. I, for one, think that all of these philosophies are great because they all come together and say, yeah, we need to do something about food waste. However, I relate most to utilitarianism as it promotes the most amount of happiness for the most amount of people. Could also connect this to John Rawls' philosophy about, you know, everyone being helped out. This is an advantage for everybody. No longer would we have to worry about food insecurities if we only bought what we needed, and we can save a whole lot more money. And I guess I'll finish it off with a little tip about, to help you combat food waste. A best if used by or before date label indicates when a product will be best of flavor or quality. It is not a purchase or safety date, so it's not a safety date. It would still be good after a little bit after the date goes by. It just probably won't be at its peak flavor. A use-by date is the last date recommended for the use of this product while at peak quality. And you could always freeze food that you're going to eat later. Food that's obviously capable of being frozen. Anyways, thank you for listening to my first podcast. I hope to create a great hobby out of this, and what a wonderful way of starting. A school project turned into a wonderful hobby that could probably take me great places someday. Anyways, have a good day, and I'll see you in the next episode. Well, you'll hear me in the next episode. Goodbye.